There is no off season, folks. That's all there is to it. So lock in, get ready. We are just 2 months away, basically from right now. Pretty much we're a couple days away from 2 months August camp getting fired up. Of course, before that, we'll have the ACC media kickoff. So we're getting right into it. It's close, but as much as we're all excited about 2023, 2024, and 25 are also important this time of year, getting those recruits signed up and lined up and committed and, putting on your best display for what you've got there at Florida State. So Seminole fans, join the chat, hit the like button before you do anything else. Leave those comments and questions. We got two of the best here. Always a great time. Chris Frazier, Spear Addicts. Get on over there. It's right here on YouTube. Spear Addicts. It's easy to find. We'll leave the link in the chat. And of course, Big Game James Coleman and Den Media Group is his YouTube channel right here as well. Guys, what's going on? Just life.
Yep, just happy to be here, guy.
Good to see both of you, definitely. All right. Chris, why don't we cut you loose on official visits? I was looking around over the last few minutes before we went live. I see that there's a lot of excitement about Jeremiah Smith, even though he's committed to Ohio State, as long as he's taking those OVs, and two going to Miami and Florida, but he's going to the big three in Florida State here in just a few weeks.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people excited about this one. And I had told everybody on my show last Monday that I wouldn't read too much into it, that, these kids are getting unlimited official visits now, and I wouldn't read too much into it because he's been verbally committed as a hard commit to Ohio State for a while now. So I just thought it was him just doing his due diligence in case things didn't work out there. Transfer portal things happen later in life. It's a possibility. And then I had one of the coaches at Florida State contact me and tell me that it was not by any means was it taken lightly, that this is an opportunity for Florida State, and that he is I don't want to say too much. He's not as locked in as people anticipated. He's not as locked in Ohio State as we all thought he was. That Florida State has a huge opportunity, and he's coming on June 19th. There may be one guy, two guys there that date. That's a Monday. He's coming on a very weird time schedule, and Florida State's enlightened me that they're going to roll out the red carpet for him. It's going to be basically everyone's paying attention to Jeremiah Smith. That's it. So they're going to push extremely hard to impress him, see if they can get him to potentially start talking more. I don't think that he would – I don't see him decommitting from Ohio State and committing to Florida State that day or anything. But they're going to try to get in his ear deep enough to continue to talk to him, and before signing day, try to get him to flip. But Florida State this weekend coming up for June 2nd.
Chris, real quick before you continue, I'm just sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to interject a statement that was often made by one of your favorite football coaches, and everybody listening in the chat. Urban Meyer used to say at Ohio State, hey, we're in Ohio. This is Ohio State. When we get these Florida commits, until signing day and until they're signed, this is, takes constant work to keep them. So, that's a tough one to keep that relationship and that commitment for that long when you're talking pulling them in from Florida all the way to Ohio. So that's certainly not one to give up on.
Real quick, Chris, before you jump into that, there was a tweet that went out about a couple months ago. A lot of these top guys played on the same Pop Warner team. They were the Ravens, if I remember correctly, was the name of their team. And there was a picture of a lot of these guys. There just so happens to be a guy that we have on our staff. That's a lot of hints in there, too. I'm using the same word a lot. On our staff who coach those young men. And a lot of people believe that some of these visits, like I'm not going to say we have, I think Ohio State, and you're correct with what Urban said in general, but I think we got a really good puncher's chance. And if they show what they can do, it's going to shock a lot of people how Florida State is going to be back dominating the state state of Florida in terms of recruiting.
Yeah, James said a lot there. I didn't want to go into that, but there, we'll just say that Florida State's coaching staff is extremely optimistic about what they can do, not only with Jeremiah Smith, but a lot of people have been pushing to say that JoJo Trader is going to go to Miami. Like everybody is like high on it. They're saying that he's like predicted to go there, and Florida State coaches are not saying that at all. Like, and everybody around that facility is saying that JoJo Trader's a lock, that he's coming to Florida State. And conversations that I've heard or seen between the staff and JoJo would speak realms that they're telling the truth. So I'm just going to listen to the coaching staff, because the one guy that I did not listen to the coaching staff on, we ended up landing last year. So this time I'm not going against them. So if they end up being wrong, then I'm going to be wrong with them.
What went through my mind when you went through all of that, and I can't believe this, but I'm going to say it anyway, unfiltered, is that, this show, what are they called? The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, where you see the dude who goes out with the 12 chicks, and he's taking them all to, making out with them, going to bed with them and everything. And then the ones that get dissed are completely stunned and shocked that, we had a connection and I thought I was the only one. And so that just sounds a little bit like recruiting during some of these times where, if you don't know the game and don't know what's going on elsewhere during these visits, you may think like, hey, yeah, we had this connection and he loved it here and we're the one.
That's basically what recruiting is in general. Actually, funny, Coach, you're a historian and coach. You like football, Mark. Barry Switzer had this rule for hiring coaches. He hired coaches based upon how their wives looked. If he thought you had an ugly wife, you couldn't work for him because you couldn't recruit. You got to be able to run games to be able to recruit. And it is the amount of connections, what you're trying to do really, really quick. It's the same thing, man. It's a weird thing, but relationships do matter when it comes to this. And even now with the transfer portal, even though things are going to change a little bit when APR comes back into effect, but you still have the opportunity of, if I miss this kid, I still have a free transfer without any penalty. So I developed this relationship. Let's say he does go to Ohio State. We miss on some of these guys that we have, and in 2 years, we have another opportunity to be able to make something happen. And he hasn't seen the bench because Ohio State keeps bringing more talent in. Well, now we can go reach back and bring that guy back here because you have the pre-established relationship, much like what just happened with Florida State with Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman is clearly a pre-established relationship from recruiting past, even though you have I think he was more of a tagger cycle, but you still got Odell there, still got Dugans there. So there's some guys that were there that did have that relationship, that rapport. So that's why it's important. But it is definitely like running game. Definitely, The Bachelor is probably the best way to describe it from the recruit side. And from the coach's side, you're trying to do everything to be able to make yourself look pretty to be picked.
This weekend is going to be it's like a perfect start to the June session of getting recruits on campus for Florida State. They're starting on the 2nd. We'll have offensive tackle Nair Daniels. We'll also have 2024 4-star running back Christian Clark. We also have 2024 4-star linebacker Edwin Spillman. 2024 4-star cornerback Wardrell Mack. And we also have 2024 3-star, let me see, he's a safety. I don't want to mess his name up, by Rodgerius Morgan. And 2024 3-star athlete Jaquarius Marshall, if I'm saying that correctly. But Florida State's starting out pretty decent when it comes to recruits in the first weekend of June. But everybody keeps talking about what's the biggest weekend for Florida State as far as who they're having on campus. And you would have to go with June 23rd through the 25th is going to be the biggest weekend. Not that June 14th through the 16th is a pretty big weekend. People have been going back and forth on which weekend's the biggest. But if you do it based off of composite score, The 23rd of June will be the largest amount of talent on campus, also the most amount of players. But the thing with Jeremiah Smith is that he's coming on a day where he'll be there for 2 days, but he's coming on the 19th, which is a Monday. He's going to be there until Wednesday, and it's going to be basically his show. It's going to be 100% focused on Jeremiah Smith. I personally think that there's a possibility of JoJo Trader coming on that day to see how that official visit goes. He has an official visit with Florida State as well, but a lot of people want to see how this is going to turn out. Like, what does this look like to see the red carpet rolled out toward the top wide receiver recruit in the nation? What is this all conjunction? What does this look like? How bad do they want him versus me? And then you've got the Spillman kid, which on the 2nd through the 4th, a lot of people, Florida State wise, fans wise, they're really second guessing what Randy Shannon's doing at Florida State in the linebacker room. He landed a really decent recruit in the 23 class, but it was only one. He landed Omar Graham Jr. in the 22 class, but he also in the 24 class, I can't remember the kid's name right now that he's already landed verbally, but he's landed him verbally in the linebacker room. And at first everybody was like, this kid's nobody. He's a project. And now everybody in the state of Florida is saying he's the best linebacker in the state of Florida. So Florida State got on him early. They were able to offer him early, get him on campus multiple times, and then he committed to Florida State. But now we're bringing in Spillman. Spillman's a high recruit across the country that a lot of people are looking at. They said that he was a Georgia lean for a while. Don't think that panned out the way that everybody thought it would. So Florida State seems to be in position to lead the recruitment for Spillman going into the weekend that he's coming for his official visit. There's so many that I could bring up that aren't on the 2nd. I'm just bringing up the first weekend and the specialty of Jeremiah Smith. But you've got Colin Fox that's coming on an official visit. You got JoJo Trader's coming on an official visit. You've got all of the top safeties in the country are coming on the 16th through the 18th, and then a couple more on the 23rd through the 25th. You've got 2 more linebackers that will be coming. We got a kid that's verbally committed to Michigan that everyone thinks is going to, like Michigan's boards are saying that he's going to decommit and go to Florida State, that he waited on that was his dream school, that there was just all these things that were brought up. I don't get to just pay attention to Florida State's boards as far as who they say we're going to get or listen just to the coaches, because when I was listening to Florida State about the safety that was coming out of that Alabama ended up getting wherever he was coming from, Alabama people all told us, all of their beat writers, all of their experts supposedly said that he was a shoe-in to Florida State. They didn't anticipate getting him at all. And all of us were saying that he was going to Alabama. He ended up going to Alabama, but it was just odd because both sides were saying that he was going to the other side. And unlucky for us, we were correct. He was going to Alabama. But we did have a huge question today on a space that we did about our safety position at Florida State. And they wanted to know why we didn't go after this FAU kid that's 5'11", like 185. If people know anything about Pat Surtain, he goes for a lot of length. He likes the 6'2", 6'3", 200-pound guys. And if they don't fit that scheme or they don't fit those measurables, he don't usually go after them. So we had told everybody that Florida State was not interested in him. And 247 put out a thing that Florida State was in contact with him. And everybody kept coming at us saying, well, 247 says that y'all are after him. And I was like, no, correction, 247 said we contacted him. There's a big difference in being after someone and contacting someone. You contact everyone that goes in the portal if it's a possible fill at need. And then he also has an injury that a lot of people didn't know about at the time. He's not coming to Florida State. Surtain didn't ever allude that he wanted him. He never told us anything about needing the kid. I told people that, but I'm just basically clearing up. A lot of people came at me because I said we wasn't going after the kid. So we didn't go after the kid. That's pretty much it. And we can go on from there unless y'all want to know any more recruits.
No, I'm sure we'll dive back into it. We'll take comments and questions from the chat. I don't know that there's anything that significant about the 3-game TV announcement that was made today, because we already knew about the big one against LSU Sunday night. I think this is just phenomenal for Florida State for a second consecutive year to be taking on one of the top teams from the SEC and to be doing it with no competition. So you got the entire college football world captivated and watching that game. And so they get that opportunity for a second consecutive year. The Southern Miss game the next weekend is an 8:30 kickoff, 8:30 at night in Tallahassee. That's on the ACC network. Then the Boston College game is a noon kickoff. And the article that I looked at, they did a poor job of not citing the network for that game. Do we know where the Boston College game is? Anyway, the first 3 were announced. I don't want to say without knowing for sure on the BC game, but it is a noon kickoff on the road. I don't know if you guys are big into the preseason magazines. I've got one here. Let me roll a few things by you here. They've got
Mark is ABC.
ABC for the Boston College game. Thank
Boston
you.
College,
Yeah. The article, I won't cite the site that forgot to put the network on the 3rd game. All right. I'm looking at Athlons here. Let me run these position rankings by you. So 14 teams, obviously, in the ACC. They've got Florida State with the second best quarterback room. They're going Drake May, who I think could eventually be better than Jordan Travis. But based on what I saw last year, and I understand that Drake May was just working off his first season. So he had a remarkable year for one season. He's a tremendous player. There's no question about that. But I think Jordan Travis is just a more proven commodity. So anyway, they got Florida State at number 2 at quarterback, number 2 at running back, number 1 at wide receiver. Wow. Which I totally agree with, but I'm saying wow more from the standpoint of if there's been a position on the field upgraded in this program in the last couple of years, incredibly, it's wide receiver at number 1. So offensive line number 1. Those are the offensive ranks, and that pretty much falls in line what we all think about how good this offense can be.
Who's number 1 for running backs?
They've got Clemson at 1.
Just because of Shipley?
Yeah.
Probably.
I mean, he did have like 1,400 all-purpose yards, I think. No, I might be wrong. He did do really well.
Yeah, they're supposed to be ranking the entire room, but obviously the number 1 guy has a ton to do with that.
No, the room is your number 1. Nobody's really worried about when we're ranking the quarterback room. Nobody's saying, oh man, Tate Rodemaker had a strong presence. If Jordan Travis goes down, our expectations completely change. Rightfully so. But when you look at what was returning already and you look at what you added, so you added Keon Coleman, another wide receiver, maybe had some other weapons around him, probably 1,000-yard receiver in of itself, but I know he's well over 800 yards. You add another guy, Jaheim Bell, who's dynamic, really played multiple positions at South Carolina. Now you look at the offensive line, and you look at all of the different Pro Football Focus rankings of position groups. On all of these guys, Florida State has a lot coming back. This is the reason why fans should not feel guilty for having excitement. This is why you should, if we do not compete for an ACC championship, which if we're competing for an ACC championship should mean we're competing for a college football playoff spot, then you should be disappointed. And there's nothing wrong with that. Based upon the evidence in which we had of last season and what things are trending and where you got better at going into the next season. And when you're looking at what other teams lost. So one would be remiss to think that, Florida State should not be one of the, if not the top team in the ACC at this point right now.
Number one offensive line. Can you guys speak to the work that's been done on this offensive line? Because ever since we've been doing this show and way before that, even when Florida State was Florida State, even 2014, 15, 16, still going to major bowl games, the offensive line was the first one to take, unless you guys correct me if I'm wrong, definitely. But it's the first position group that I think really took a downgrade. That kind of led the rest of it down, was the offensive line. And now to get to a position where it's considered the best in the conference, they've obviously done a great job reworking this offensive line.
Yeah, it's just like, it's like recruiting as well. I want to bring this up real quick because he had just made the statement earlier today. But the number one offensive tackle in the country, Brandon Baker, they've been saying that he's trending toward Oregon very heavily for quite some time. And his conversation today with On 3, he said that people are sleeping on two teams, and Florida State and Tennessee are the two teams. He said that Florida State's doing everything in their power, and he's really liking what he's seeing from Coach Atkins. But from where this offensive line fell to, and it was gradually falling, like I told many people for a long time, because they keep saying 15 was our worst, and it might be, we might have been really bad in 15, but it started in 14 when Jameis Winston was still here. The amount of hits that he took, even against Oregon in the playoff game, was insanity. Like we couldn't have been any worse at offensive line. We just had one of the offensive linemen, the center, and I can't remember his name right now. We had the center from back in 2013 and 14 on a space, and we were talking about, because he was here till 18, we were talking about it, and Trickett was offensive line coach, and for some reason we started going after not necessarily the top rated guys. We started going after guys that just wanted to work. Most of them were undersized, was our biggest problem. We had a lot of guys on the offensive line that were they were small. They might have been tough minded, they might have been strong, country strong, but they were very undersized, and it showed up for over the next 4 years, and it continued to show up throughout the 2020-2021 season. And I think that's what people aren't paying attention to at Florida State. Like the 2022 cycle alone, Florida State went after so many offensive linemen. They put all of their resources to Atkins and said, look, we've got to get an offensive line for the future. We've got to do something. So let's put everything we've got into this basket of getting as many top grade offensive linemen that we can for the future. And then they threw it in when the transfer portal came about and pulling the best offensive lineman and offensive tackle that they could, just like they did this past season with getting, was it Byers and Casey Roddick? Like, you had to build that right off the bat. So what we were versus what we are now, I completely agree with Mark with what you were saying, but to me, it's about what is the future of the line back, or the offensive line going to look like. And I'm very pleased with what we're recruiting. That's why I say pay Atkins. If you got to pay two head coaches, it might as well be Atkins and Norvell instead of paying someone else, because Atkins does a job that I don't know if anybody else in the country does that well at, because our offensive line has definitely got depth, and it's a complete night and day difference from what we had just a few years ago.
Our buddy William, thanks for being here. Do we know the safety that's visiting from Alabama? Because I've not been able to find who that would be. 247 Sports has it up behind their paywall.
I got it. Let me go to it. It is Christian Story. He's a safety visiting from Alabama.
Yeah, I know who that is. Okay.
Yeah, I like him, to be honest. Great length. Kid's pretty good from sideline to sideline. I don't like that the kids put just their highlights on their huddle. Like, I can't stand that. I like seeing game film. Even if the play doesn't involve them, I want to see what they were doing on this particular play. It's kind of hard to see all of that. So, but I know that's what they're told to do. But sometimes it's about what you did that no one threw the ball in your direction. Because most of the time, the reason the ball comes your direction is the safeties, because they think they have an opening or you did something wrong, and then you made up for it. If the quarterback's smart. So I like the plays where they shut them down where nothing could happen, and those are the plays that I like to see. But everything about the young man from Alabama seems to be right on par with what Coach Surtain likes.
Also, another linebacker to look from great, one of the greatest high schools in the state of Florida, and that's Florida State University Developmental Research School, aka Florida High. Ashton Hampton. His dad actually was a special teams coach under Taggart the first year. Alonzo Hampton, he's now the head football coach. I forgot what the name of the HBCU is, but he's the head football coach. But Ashton is a guy who's climbing up the rankings right now. Again, like Chris was saying, long, rangy, stupid athletic, plays against can cover, physical, really, really good athlete. As well as still being in it for KJ Bolden, even though I don't think we'll get him, but quite a few other position groups. Also, I think this is one of those positions where I think Florida State invests heavy, not just in safety, but in general on defense. They're going to invest heavy in the transfer portal for the last time for the 2024 class, knowing that they've got some pieces in 2025 where they can really address some needs moving forward for the future. Kid I just saw that I know that they're really, really drooling over. Drake, I was about to say Drake May. What's Drake's last? Drake Stubbs. His brother actually is a walk-on at Florida State right now. But Drake is about all of 6'4", rangy, stupid athletic, covers the field, reminds me of Pat Watkins a little bit. Out of what's about to be a no pipeline for whatever reason, Mandarin High School. And there's a lot of other places where they'll be able to hit home runs. And something else that I think they're going to do, maybe for some of these guys who are bigger, like KJ Bolden has some good size to him, you may end up, not saying him particular, but you may find them that third safety not playing safety. Eventually doing what we did with Brandon Gant, moving him into the box, because it was a great statement made on the FSU Spaces, I believe it was by George, with a Renegade Report, where it's just not a lot of great linebacker play right now in the way that the game has gone with spread. I always joked one of the things that high school linebackers don't know how to do anyway is cover, because you don't have enough time and reps to really teach them how to cover properly. But who does? Safeties typically know how to cover a little bit. Well, not a little bit. They know how to cover better than most linebackers. And if you're over 200 pounds, you can play linebacker in today's game, with it being more sideline to sideline, as long as you have a propensity to want to be able to hit somebody. So I think that's kind of where guys can save themselves. Over recruiting the DB position, flip guys. It's kind of like if you used to play NCAA, you recruit somebody for one thing, and then when they come in there, you flip them and their overall rating ranks up a little bit higher when you put them down somewhere else, and you can go edit them to make them a little taller, make them a little bigger. That might be what FSU has to do until they find guys like your Blake Nicholsons. You're only going to get, I believe, 1 to 2 guys that can truly, truly be able to do everything that it is that you want until you teach them that. But right now, Florida State's in a position where we ain't really got time to teach. We got to go ahead and take advantage of what we got.
I'm looking at Athlons, and I don't necessarily know that this is any groundbreaking stuff, but this comes from an opposing ACC assistant coach, anonymous. This program's really, really talented. As a roster, they might be their best since Jimbo Fisher's title. You always get asked, are they back? Yeah, they might be. They're not one of those top 6 or so teams. They're not one of those top 6 or so teams nationally, but they can win this league. Okay. That would be a huge step up for them. They've upgraded at every position at the 1s and 2s compared to when Mike Norvell got there. There's a pro mentality at the place. You have to take an NFL approach to balancing discipline and motivation. He's put the right kind of discipline back in the program, and schematically, they're sound on both sides. They've inched that along as they've been able to get the talent in place. This could be a breakout season if they're as improved as we think on both lines. This could be the first year in forever where Florida State just looks like they have a Florida State quality offensive line. You get the idea the clouds have parted on all the recruiting problems.
Yeah, and
I want to answer that top 6 question, though. I mean, statement. Like,
Yeah.
I'll give you Ohio State. They've won something recently. I'll give you Bama. They've won something recently. I'll give you Georgia. Even with the turnover and these guys, Alabama losing 10 NFL players, Georgia losing 10. I believe Michigan lost. I mean, not Michigan. Ohio State lost quite a few as well. What I won't give you is LSU, who we've beat. I won't give you. I'm looking at like a ranking. I don't understand. Texas hasn't won since I was in college, and they've been really, really bad lately. So I'm not saying that they won't be improved, but I won't concede to us not being as good as Texas.
Yep.
I won't concede to us not being as good as Michigan, because although Michigan has been to the playoff, they haven't really seen. They've been there. They just showed up. They punched the ticket, but when it's time to perform, they haven't. But I'll even give you Michigan a little bit, but I'm not going to give you USC right now, because USC was basically, I think they were 11-3. We were 10-3.
Their defense is horrible.
Exactly. They've got Caleb Williams, who's awesome, but that Clemson, I think if anybody's watched the games the last 2 years, we've competed with Clemson. I think I could argue that we beat ourselves, not taking anything away from them. It's just not shying away from them. I won't shy away from Notre Dame, which I think while I'm grateful that their coach and I love the opportunity of their coach, I don't think their coach is good, though. Not as good as Brian Kelly was when he was there. I won't concede to Penn State. I won't concede to Oklahoma. I won't concede to Tennessee. There are very few teams that if you told me, James, like these are the top 6, these are who our top 6 are, that just make me say, I don't think we have a chance. Hell, the number 4 team in this ranking, I'm betting that we're going to beat them again. And not just because I'm a homer, but because I bet that I was going to beat them last year when I saw it. I think a lot of things people are using recency bias on Florida State, but using legacy bias on everybody else. Which, if we're going to compare them and we're going to use recency for everybody, I think you have to be able to take it like in true form, especially if, like that anonymous coach said, you believe that this same Florida State team that went 11-3 has improved and gotten better on every aspect of the ball. That would just be my only critique of that statement. Outside of that, everything else seemed to be pretty fair.
Yeah, so in terms of where Florida State stands among the elite, this season is going to be obviously enormous, because I saw the improvement last year was remarkable. I saw the best team that they've had since 15 or 16. And now do they take the next steps? They bring almost anybody back. I don't know that there's a school in the country at their level that brought as much talent back as they did. You know, everybody had significant losses in terms of the kind of programs we're talking about across the board. Until proven otherwise, Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State and Michigan are better programs, but I wouldn't be surprised if Florida State caught one of them or 2 of them or 3 of them, or, got themselves into the mix. Like it's not an unreachable, the gap's not that great necessarily. Then I think, James hit a bunch of the schools out there that I think are on the same tier, and we'll see. Penn State, Clemson, USC, and some others. I'm not going to rank them exactly. I'm just going to put them on a same tier. I think Florida State's on the second tier right now. And there's only a few schools that they can take a back seat to, and they're going to have the opportunity to prove otherwise. Maybe they'll catch them this year.
Would you put LSU in that same tier?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think they're on the same tier. Yep. Oh, yeah.
So that's been the biggest question that we've been having over this past couple of, I'd say the past couple of months. We've been getting asked a lot, why are people now favoring LSU to beat Florida State when it first came out? Florida State was favored by 1 point. Now LSU's favored to win the game by 2.5 at Vegas.
Oh, it's 2.5
SEC
now?
Yeah, it's SEC bias. If I'm not mistaken, that's the last thing that I saw was 2.5. Y'all can look and see, but that was the last thing I saw.
Well, to me, there's a difference between sometimes who wins the game and still making an evaluation of where these teams stand. So, for example, if Florida State walks off the field and they won 38-10 against LSU, then I'm like, that's the better team. It's not even debatable. If they win and it's a solid win, they win 27-17. They had control of the game, still competitive, but Florida State had control of the game, much like they did at times. You know, James has talked about this, and I remember watching every play of that game last year. They played a better football game than LSU. LSU almost stole it at the end, but Florida State was the better team from very early in that game until the final 4 minutes.
Yeah.
But if those teams walk off the field and it's 28-27, I'm going to tell you, well, the team that won the game gets credit for the win. Absolutely. But I don't know who's the better team because they could play another 9 times and they could split, the total of the 10 games. So I'm kind of one of those. I look at that. That's my perspective and evaluation of teams is not just who would win if they played, but more so who would win if they played 10 times. Because just about anybody can win a game. Unless we're talking about, bringing Boston College into the conversation. But we're talking about the best teams.
Well, I mean, it's possible. We talk about Florida State possibly playing Clemson twice this year. We're going to play them once in the regular season, and our plan is we play them in the ACC championship because we don't plan on them losing another ACC game. I mean, it's very possible that you play LSU twice this year. You play them the first game of the season. They don't lose again. They end up winning their conference of the SEC. They end up in the playoffs. We end up in the playoffs, and it's 2 versus 4, 3, whatever, however it works. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's possible. There's a possibility behind it. I don't necessarily want to play both of those teams twice, but it is possible that it happens because I don't think LSU season's over if they lose to Florida State. I don't think that they're completely out of it.
If you are looking at those two teams playing a second time, and I'm not talking about a Florida State fan or LSU perspective, I'm just talking neutrally, you want LSU to lose the game. Because Florida State's going to have to win the ACC, most likely, to be in that playoff. Yep. LSU, shoot, if they win the rest of their games and go play Georgia and lose a close SEC championship game, something like that, that's more likely the scenario that has to happen, that Florida State needs to win the ACC, of course.
I mean, it's very possible that you get 2 SEC teams and 1 ACC, and if we do what we're supposed to, and 1 Big Ten team. Or it's possible that 2 Big Ten teams, an SEC team and an ACC team, end up in there. Or if none of us take care of the ACC, then I just don't like seeing a very large amount of one conference in the last bit, which they did their due diligence last year. But TCU wasn't, in my eyes, was it a lucky win that they beat Michigan? No, but I still don't think they should have. To me, the teams that they were fixing to play, I was just like, this doesn't make much sense to me. So many close games, they lost their conference. And then but we'll sit here and say that Florida State has to win the ACC to get to the playoffs, but TCU didn't have to.
I think what people got to realize, got to look at is even, like, for example, people call Florida's, was it, not in 2006, so 2008, the 2008 championship team, one of the best championship teams they ever played, without looking at the fact that they actually 06 and 08, they backdoored their way into the national championship game. Not taking anything away from them, but that's also what happened with TCU. It was an incredible weekend of football. And that's the beautiful thing about college is when you think you got stuff wrapped up, you don't have it wrapped up. It's It makes absolutely no sense. But I actually think that the cure for not having multiple SEC teams or even multiple Big Ten teams is for the Pac-12 to handle their business and send the team over that's a one-loss team at minimum. I think if ACC has a one-loss team, I don't think you'll find a one-loss SEC team in there if everybody else has their conference champion in there. Because I think everybody who should win those have games that are competitive enough. Like for let's say Georgia lose to LSU, even though Georgia is the back-to-back defending national champion. You can't look at Georgia's schedule right now and say a loss to a competent LSU team warrants them to be able to get another opportunity, because they would have lost to the only team that they really played based upon what we're looking at right now. Not saying the SEC isn't tough, but what I'm saying is that schedule right now is not like University of Florida schedule or other team schedules. And I do think if LSU, but I don't see anybody beating Georgia. That's just me being honest. But and I see LSU having 2 losses at minimum. But I do think Michigan and Penn State have better teams, and Ohio State has some question marks at quarterback this year. And I seen one person say you got to win your conference first, and I'm like, that's and he had a Michigan thing, which is funny. It's like almost like how Georgia fans started. We're absent for 40 years, and now they're into the convo. Like Michigan, I don't remember Michigan getting an opportunity to really beat Ohio State like that. I remember Ohio State throttling them. So conference, you had a lot of conference championships in the leather helmet era, but like lately, that's recency bias. But if we're just looking at what's returning and what's coming up, I do think, though, that it will be a very exciting year for college football, and they're going to do a hell of a job marketing, especially with all the other outside noise and drama surrounding conference realignment. So right now, everybody's talking about Colorado going back to the Big 12 and leaving the Pac-12, and just all these different things that are supposed to be happening with conference realignment on top of NIL. And coaches like Dirkwitz saying stupid things like, I can't believe these athletes are making more than my brother who's a pediatrician who saves lives. Mind you, he makes more than his brother-in-law who's a pediatrician, and he just coaches kids. He doesn't save any lives, but just it's making for a really exciting time for football. I can't wait till Saturday so I can just be watching and tuned in.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things going on, and we're going to find out here in just a few days what the SEC is going to decide in terms of a schedule. The ACC made their decision about their scheduling situation going forward, which is definitely the best move for the conference to get the 2 best teams in the championship game. And when I look at Florida State and Clemson, again, I've mentioned this, that other than the LSU game, I want to see Florida State just get on the field with another really good team, and they'll do that right out of the gate. That's what's fun about these early season matchups, and I do think LSU is a legit top 10 team, and I don't care what the rankings say. I believe that they are one of the 10 best teams in America. And I've got more confidence in Florida State than Clemson, just because even though Clemson won the head-to-head and they won the conference, didn't lose a conference game, I just don't see that Florida State would have played some of the games that Clemson showed us last year. Clemson just got punished by Notre Dame. And that wasn't even a good Notre Dame team. And they just got beat to hell. And they looked bad against Tennessee, and they got whipped in that game. Florida State lost all close games. And when they did show up against a really good LSU team, they won the game. So they didn't play a murderer's row, but they showed up against the one best opponent they had. And for as ugly as Oklahoma's record looked, they lost outside of Texas 1-score games, and they'll be a lot better this year. So.
I also think people got to look to that 3-game stretch. And I keep reminding people again, it's not making an excuse. Losses suck. You had every chance. Jared Verse didn't play the first half against Wake Forest because Jared Verse was injured and banged up. And then when he went in there, you saw a span where FSU's defense all but effectively stopped Wake Forest and the offense was coming back, I always tell people we ran out of time more than we lost that game. We had a really ugly first half, but no Jared Verse, no Fabian Lovett, two of your better defensive linemen. That puts you in a really, really bind, especially going up against a really funky offense with a slow mesh. That guy's at Notre Dame now. When you didn't have the guys again, you didn't have Fabian against NC State. I blame on Coach Norvell. That's not on the defense. That's on him. But Clemson, with a team that can run, honestly, I'd argue if Florida really was interested in winning the football game, they would have just ran the ball. Like, they wouldn't have tried to throw the ball on us. They thought they saw weakness with us having Akeem Dent out at safety. They were able to exploit that. They got fixed, but they were running the ball at will on us because of the injuries that we had on the interior line. They've kind of fixed those things. But I would love that. But I think I told Chris this: championships aren't won by necessarily the most talented team. They're won by the healthy team. Like, you got to remain healthy. What happens if Georgia's on their third string D line? I know they got a lot of 5-stars, but it's a reason why the starters are the starters. Like, that guy probably isn't ready to be what they need him to be at this point. So Florida State, not even having the caliber of blue chip players that other programs have, still did enough to be able to be considered a top team and not be healthy. But a Florida State team that can remain healthy throughout this college football season will be one that's a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating, and especially since those two teams we're most likely going to get to see them play twice. I am more confident of those two teams getting together in the ACC championship game than I am about any two teams in college football getting together for a conference championship game. I know things happen, injuries, fluke plays, just teams being better than we thought or not as good as we thought. So, we've all assumed things were going to happen a certain way, and then they don't. So if North Carolina shows up or Pitt in an ACC championship game, I'm not going to be shocked, but I'm just saying I'm more confident that those two teams will show up in the conference championship game than any other two teams in any other conference. And I don't like that. I don't like that predictability, but since Florida State's been down for several years, I am ready for a Clemson Florida State game where everything's on the line, kind of like 2013, 14, 15 in that range. That will be fun. Spear Addicts, Chris, what's going on over there?
Well, we started a 3-part series to Florida State's positions matching up with some of the national title winners, or actually all of the national title winners at Florida State. So we're comparing the 2023 roster to the 2013 roster, the 99 roster, and the 93 roster. And really, I'm going to give everybody this. It really matches up well besides the coaches. We have good coaches. They just haven't proven what those two previous coaching staffs have proven. Like me and James keep talking about it. Like, everybody keeps asking us, is this a national title team or a bust? And I'm like, it's not a bust if we don't win a national title. But the roster is good enough to be a national contender. It's good enough. If they stay healthy, it's good enough to compete. But if our coaching staff for the first time wins an ACC championship and then somehow pulls out winning a national title that same year, I don't know of another college football coach that has done that, where they've won their first conference and won a national title that year. I'm sure somewhere along the line it may have happened, but not that I know of. Not in the BCS era, not in the playoff era that I know of.
What are you throwing at me there, Chris? What do I have to go through my Rolodex up top? You're saying didn't win anything the year before?
No. What I'm saying is
first ever conference championship and first ever national championship
in the same year.
Well, Florida State's already won the ACC. What do you mean? During the playoff era?
No, Mike Norvell has yet to win an ACC championship.
That coaching staff, head coach.
Yeah, so if this coaching staff was able to pull off their first ACC championship and then also win a national title, I don't know if there's another coaching staff in this era that has pulled that off. And
Gene Chizik, Auburn, 2010.
okay,
8-5, never
Fair.
won anything. Won the national championship. Cam Newton the next year.
the next year or the same year?
The next year. They went 8-5 the year before. Then the next season, that was his first season. They went 8-5.
I got you. I got what you're saying. I got you.
Then they won the national championship the next year. Cam Newton year. Yep.
All right. Well,
even him, he's the guy who was again. Hopefully, he doesn't follow the Gene Chizik model because he was fired not too long after that. But
I mean, Cam Newton was a huge.
Yes.
I mean, at the end of the day, players play. If they execute the plays, then my only question is like what me and James were talking about with Florida State is a lot of people want to blame the defense for some of the losses that we had, that the defense should have saved Florida State in situations. But you're not accounting for those fourth down plays that we didn't complete that put teams in scoring position. You're not accounting for the offense not scoring in the second half against NC State at all. Like you can't blame a defense for holding a team below 24 points when your offense should score more than 24 points, regardless of who they were playing. And we didn't do so in some of those games. They only want to blame our defense. I'm not saying that we had the greatest defense that Florida State's ever seen, or even the greatest defense in the conference at that time. But we did finish statistically a top 15 defense. And that's with all of those things going wrong, where you pitched the ball on the 1 yard line and fumbled it and LSU runs it back. Like, that's coaches' calls that cause these problems. Now, if it was executed correctly, then that doesn't happen. But why put that scenario there? Why not just hand the ball off? Like, why are we tossing the ball on the 1 yard line? Don't get too cute. Those things don't happen. 4th and 8 on the 22 yard line of your side. Don't go for it on 4th down. So that there's things that Florida State's offense did that we gave up so many points by making dumb mistakes on offense. Then they said the defense was the reason we lost these 3 games in a row. And I disagree, because the 3 games we lost in a row, we didn't lose by a crazy margin, and we didn't lose by them scoring 35, 40 points. We should be able to score more than 24 points a game. We should be somewhere around 38 to 40 points a game with what offense you've got. And when you don't do so, I think our defense is set up to hold people 24 or below. And as long as you score more than 24 points, you should win. That held fast versus LSU. That held fast against most of the teams that you beat. You were able to hold them under a number, and you scored this number. Like, everybody's looking at Florida State wanting those dominant defensive days back where you saw those goofy games where we won 8-14 or some goofy number from their side because of how great our defense was, or we had safeties. So we won 15-12. It was just stuff like that. It's a completely different coaching staff, completely different scheme. College football has changed so much since that time that I don't think you get a more dominant defense than Georgia. But look what Ohio State was able to do to them in the playoffs. That was an elite defense that Ohio State was playing, but it didn't look like it. Ohio State was putting up points like it was, to me, looked like it was easy. And that's why I thought Ohio State had that game. I was like, I don't know if Georgia can keep up with this, the way that Ohio State just continuously, every time they get the ball, they're scoring. And then the next thing you know, their defense finally steps up, and then their offense makes a crazy play. And then they finally stop Ohio State on 2 drives, and then it happens. But Ohio State more lost that game than Georgia won it, in the way I see it. Like, Ohio State made some mistakes, critical, at the end there, that if they would have just kept to their character, done what they were doing the entire game, then you probably come out with a win.
Yeah, don't remind me.
To me, Ohio State in that game, that particular game, maybe not the entire season, but that game, Ohio State was the better team. They were better coached, they were better prepared, and talent came up, and maybe experience came up, because Georgia was experienced in the situation where Ohio State's team was not. But the better team that day was definitely Ohio State.
Ohio State's defense is ranked 14th. They gave up 1 less touchdown than Florida State's defense. But nobody's saying fire Ohio State's defensive coordinator.
I don't know
Alabama.
about that.
Alabama. Well, maybe I don't. You know what? I don't.
You
watch
come on
them.
the Ohio State shows, they think anytime they lose a game, everybody should get fired. They want Ryan Day fired.
Alabama's defense finished 13th. They're not far off from Florida. I say all that to say all of those coordinators, Florida State fans would drool over. Like we would have a huge phallic presence raised if we were able to get those guys when our guys like right there. I just don't get it, but that's just me.
Chris, this is how I'm wired. Anytime you throw out a situation or a dynamic like you just did, I'm going to be like thinking about it for the next few minutes. I got 4 more for you. I got Bob Stoops took over Oklahoma in 99, went 7-5, won the national championship the next year in 2000. You guys remember that one well. Jim Tressel took over Ohio State in 01, went 7-5. Next season, 14-0, won the national championship. Urban Meyer took over Florida, hadn't won the SEC his first year, 05. Then he won the national championship in 06. And then Les Miles took over LSU in 05. And in his third year, 07, they won the national championship. He had not won the SEC.
Did Florida win 08 or 06?
They won both, 06 and 08.
So they have 3 national titles. Whoa. Wait a minute. Okay, yeah, that's right. My bad. I got lost for a second.
So anyway, I like to kind of go through the mental gymnastics of trying to figure out those things.
Well, at Florida State, it ain't happened. That's all I'm getting at. And the coaching staff, and James pulls it up a lot. Mike Norvell's only on his 8th year as a head football coach. Very young coach. It to me is if Florida State goes and wins an ACC championship, that's definitely an improvement from last year, any year previous to Norvell's era. But if Florida State has the roster to do so, and I'm going to be honest, I think Alex Atkins, being the offensive coordinator with the experience that he has, is a little bit older. I think that it does better for Florida State. And I've got nothing against Kenny Dillingham. I got nothing against Norvell. I just think the experience level, living a little bit longer, seeing a little bit more than the other guys. Alex Atkins is a huge balancer for Florida State. And I know it sounds like we talk Alex Atkins up all the time, but there's no reason not to. Like, the guy is – he is what he is, and I think he does a phenomenal job at balancing. Like, I think we ran the ball so much better under Alex Atkins than we did Dillingham and Norvell their first year. And then when Atkins came in, we just seemed to run the ball a whole lot better. Yes, we had a couple of offensive linemen that were better, but we also had more hurt that year than the previous season, where I think we should have ran the ball better. But we'll see.
Chris, appreciate you being here. Everybody join Chris on Spear Addicts. We've dropped the link in the chat a few times, so check it out. When's your next live show?
What's today? Tomorrow at 7:30?
Okay. 7:30 Thursday night, everyone. Spear Addicts with Chris. James, what's going on?
It's that time of year again, book bag drive. So We're doing Orlando, Jacksonville, Tallahassee, Atlanta. We were trying to raise 3,600 book bags, $36 a book bag. So that's a lot of money if you do the math. But every year we've raised it. So we're just going to continue to push the envelope, see how much better we can get. With that $36, the kid receives a backpack with a 9 weeks worth of supply of stuff in it, school supplies. They also, each family gets about a week's worth of groceries that we have there. Then we do my football camps. So we'll have all of those different things going. If you go to mftkfoundation.com, you can go donate there. That's the easiest way to tell people. And outside of that, just trying to get to 3,000 subscribers. Once we get to 3,000 subscribers, we'll give away $300. Also, if I reach 3,000 subscribers, I will do a giveaway. It won't be the same day, more than likely, but we will do a giveaway for FSU, LSU ticket. And I just value on my show, we just looked it up, what the value of a Plaza ticket. Right now, you got to you got to be really rich to go to this game. So this is it's about $450 per ticket for the level of seat that I'm giving, and it ain't the greatest seats. So if you want to win, just go click the like button, and if you want to be able to help the book bag drive and get something, go think about being a member to the channel. All money that's raised on that channel goes toward this. Right now, I think I got like 3,100 book bags that I have left to collect money for. So it's going to be a good challenge. Love it.
Good work. Good work. Everybody, I'm taking calls at 8:00 Eastern, so head on over to the main channel. We'll take your college football calls. Chris, appreciate you being here, taking the time. James, you as well, you know that. And we will see you guys soon.